Alright guys, we are now at week 35 in this championship season. We've got plenty to talk through in today's video. We had the couple of matches going on in midweek in the championship. Bit of FA Cup action to go ahead and digest as well. We've got some cracking matches coming up, a few local encounters to go over, big games at the top and bottom, and as always, want to get your guys' verdict on what you think will happen in the comments down below. Plenty of variables to discuss in today's video, but without any further ado, let's jump into it. And starting out with the Friday night fixture, Hull going up against West Brom. Hull massively in need of a win, could really do with turning around their fortunes after the winless run that they currently find themselves on. Another quite disappointing one up against Bristol City last time out, losing 1-0. Fairly narrow margins, but once again struggle to create many clear-cut chances, and ultimately that's been their big problem. I do feel as if this is the sort of game where the longer it stays level probably suits Hull a little bit more, but the way West Brom have been starting matches recently, most notably that one against Middlesbrough last time when they found themselves 2 goals up after just 10 minutes after Daryl DK had that early brace, feel like West Brom are going to start here like a million miles an hour, and if they do get an early goal or two over the line, I struggle to see how Hull come back due to the lack of firepower in that team at the moment. So score prediction here, big one for West Brom to get back in the playoff race and make it back-to-back wins. Going to go 2-0 to the Baggies on the road. I fancy them in that one. Next then to Ewood Park for Blackburn up against Sheffield United, and what a match we could have on our hands for this one. Of course, both sides were involved in FA Cup action in the midweek, but back now to championship action, and I think this one's a fairly tough one to call. Blackburn on a really good unbeaten run at the moment. Obviously that stretches to all competitions after that win against Leicester, but 7 unbeaten in the championship, a good winning run which they've been on recently. I think they're getting quite a bit of joy out of that sort of new look forward 3 they've got, of Dolan, who impressed in midweek, Gallagher, and then Sorba Thomas playing on that right hand side. They've been really good at holding on to leads as well, something that I've noticed with Blackburn this season. Again, Sheffield United though, this will be a really interesting test because, especially thinking back to the reverse fixture earlier on in the season, Blackburn have had a select few matches where they've just sort of imploded and had nothing to offer going forward, and defensively looked a little bit vulnerable, and Sheffield United earlier on in the season was one of those games. They beat them 3-0 in the end, I think having over 20 shots. Blackburn didn't have a shot on target and barely threatened them, but so much has changed since they last met, and obviously that fixture being at Bramall Lane. For this one, I think I'm maybe edging towards a draw, but a Blackburn win wouldn't massively surprise me here because of how competitive they've looked recently. Score prediction there though, going to go for a 1-1er. Blackburn aren't as draw shy as they previously were. After that for Cardiff up against Bristol City, things remaining very close down at the bottom of the championship. Cardiff just about doing enough at the moment to keep their head above water. Not the easiest of fixtures they're coming into this weekend against the Bristol City side, who were in action in midweek to be fair, so maybe a little bit of fatigue coming out of that, especially playing the champions of England in Manchester City. Losing 3-0, but that not really painting the picture of how competitive Bristol City were for a lot of that game. I think Alex Scott grabbing a lot of the headlines after that one, got an endorsement by Pep Guardiola along with Matty James, which was nice to see. But Bristol City on the second longest unbeaten run in the championship, only second to Burnley at the moment. I think they come into this one as the overwhelming favourites. Head-to-head record in recent years also backs up that for Bristol City in this one. I think it'll be tight, but I think Bristol City snatch it on the road. 1-0 Bristol City, I'm saying in that one, which doesn't really do much to help Cardiff. After that for Blackpool up against Burnley, back to league action for Burnley this weekend. They're on the longest unbeaten run in the championship, and I think this one could get a little bit messy for Blackpool, if I'm honest. I know the reverse fixture was an absolutely thrilling 6-goal, involvement between both sides. Blackpool snatching that late equaliser to make it 3-3 at Turf Moor. I'm not sure we're going to get a repeat of that in this one. McCarthy's Blackpool side haven't offered much on the ice so far, and going up against a side who are going to be the runaway champions this season isn't ideal timing for them after they got exposed by Reading last time. Burnley haven't been as goal heavy on the road as they have been at Turf Moor, but I think looking at the grounds they've been to recently, Millwall, Luton, even Stoke to a certain extent, did make it tough for them. I'm not sure if this Blackpool side has got that same resolute defensive performance in them as some of those other teams that Burnley have played recently on the road. I think that as soon as the first one goes in, there's a danger of, quite similar to how the Huddersfield game against Burnley panned out, where Burnley just take complete control over this one. It's a local derby, but I'm saying 3-0 Burnley in this one. Really think they could really twist the knife in on McCarthy there. Next then to Huddersfield up against Coventry. I was at Deepdale in midweek to watch Coventry in the flesh, and a little bit of a leggy performance, I'd say, perhaps. Don't think they were quite at their sparkling best. Certainly not up to the level that they showed at the weekend against Sunderland. Sometimes we do get that in the Championship when the turnover is very quick, going from Saturday to Tuesday. Don't quite have that same performance in your legs, and it did feel a little bit like that for Coventry, albeit they did still craft out some decent chances, Preston along with that as well, and it definitely shouldn't have finished 0-0, both teams should have got on the score sheet at least once for that game. But Huddersfield maybe can take a little bit of confidence by the fact that Coventry looked a little bit jaded in midweek, and perhaps they're not that complete package so far. I certainly think that lack of squad depth maybe in some areas could cost Coventry when those Saturday midweek games do roll around more regularly. In terms of Huddersfield, it's tough to put a gauge on them at the moment, especially under Warnock. Got that first win with them against Birmingham, and then up against Burnley. I mean, we couldn't judge them on that performance. They got absolutely ripped to pieces, but most teams have that have visited Turf Moor this season. I think with that more quality in their squad, it's Coventry that I'm leaning towards, but I wasn't blown away with them in midweek. Score prediction, just going to back Cov for a 2-1, I think, but a little bit unsure on that game. After that, for Luton up against Swansea. Obviously, we had Swansea in action on that Monday night game against Rotherham, and despite picking up a point, I did fancy them to get something from that game. Another pretty unconvincing overall performance. I think that's the real problem with Swansea at the moment. A lot of quite disgruntled fans, and I think given the level of performances we've been seeing from them recently, understandably so. I think this is a really tough game to go into as well for a side who is lacking confidence. I think when I watch them play at the moment, the fan base a little bit detached from the way they're playing as well. To go to a side like Luton, where I'm expecting Swansea will have a lot of the ball, but Luton know precisely when to press a team, the right player to go in on. I just feel like Luton could get quite a bit of joy out of this one. It's a clash of styles, and one which I see Luton coming out on top of. Obviously, Luton involved in that bonkers game in midweek, and credit to them for bringing it back 2-2 against Millwall in the end. Obviously had a disastrous start to that game with that Horvath mistake, but second half much more like them. I think they win this game, if I'm honest, to go ahead and keep the pressure on some of the sides around them. Score prediction in this one, I'm going to go 2-0 Luton. Next then to the Riverside for Middlesbrough up against Reading, and there's just never a dull moment when it comes to Reading, is there? Now facing a possible point deduction. What's been spoken about as of recording is 2 potential 6-point deductions which could be applied to Reading this season, so an overall of 12, which is currently being discussed. If that was to happen, they'd be reduced down to 32 points, which would currently see them just 1 point above the relegation zone, so would drop them right back in it. We've been speaking about Reading for quite some time as being one of those sides in limbo at the moment in terms of having no real fears of relegation or any aspirations of going up, but this news recently could have absolutely rock them and has put some real significance on these next few matches while this potential point deduction does loom up in the air. Not a great time when you are in need of some points, I think, to be heading to the Riverside, especially to play a Middlesbrough team who I think will be bang up for this fixture after dropping their levels a little bit last time at the Hawthorns against West Brom. I think they'll be more than keen to get back to winning ways at the Riverside, especially where they've been really strong this season against a Reading side who've been pretty poor on the road, all things considered. I think Middlesbrough win this one. I think they do so convincingly. 3-0 Middlesbrough is what I'm saying for that one, which, yeah, really could hurt Reading in the grand scheme of things. Next then to Millwall up against Norwich. Big game in the promotion picture right here. Millwall currently 5th in the Championship. Norwich, one of the sides looking to take one of those playoff positions in 7th. Just 2 points separating these two in the table at the moment. Millwall, who were in action in midweek, that bonkers game against Luton, finishing as a 2-2 draw. Really bizarre one, especially from a Millwall point of view. Got 2 goals. Obviously the Fleming one massively helped by that goalkeeping mistake, and the second one probably coming somewhat against the run of play. But if there's any manager that you want to be sort of in the dugout to see out a game when you're 2-0 up away from home. That is Gary Rowett and that is Millwall, but seemed to invite the pressure for a lot of that game, not just the second half, and in the end that told Millwall and Luton, got their 2 goals back. Back at home for the Den for this one, and I'm expecting a different game here. Norwich, who have been on a good unbeaten run recently. I think we're seeing more from this side under Wagner. I think some of their attacking players especially are really starting to come into form now, but I still feel as if they do have a mistake in them, particularly on the road where I don't think they've quite cracked the formula yet. And you know what? I actually think that Millwall could snatch something here, and I do still see 1 or 2 fragilities in that Norwich backline, which I know they've improved on, but a side like Millwall I think are good enough to go ahead and capitalise on one of those things. So score prediction for this one, I actually think Millwall could take it at the Den. 2-1 Millwall, I'm saying, for that game, which yeah, we'll put a big cushion between them and Norwich. Next then to Rotherham up against QPR, and Rotherham really have a chance here to stick QPR right in the relegation race, with Rotherham only 2 points behind QPR at the moment. Should they win this one, will leapfrog them in the league and leave QPR in a whole heap of trouble. It remains to be seen how quickly Gareth Ainsworth will go ahead and get a tune out of this squad. It was a fairly tough first game to go into against Blackburn, and while there were a few signs there's similar problems persisting, and this is going to be a tough game. A Rotherham side unbeaten in their last 2. I think considering that the bottom 4 had all lost in the last game week, Rotherham picking up a point on the road on Monday night wasn't the worst result in the world, but to be honest, they could have gone on to win that game. Thinking the second half especially, Swansea were there for the taking. Rotherham have momentum about them at the moment, going off the recent form, and you know what, I think they may take this one at home. 1-0 Rotherham, I'm going for this one, and for them to leapfrog QPR in the league. Next then to the Stadium of Light for Sunderland up against Stoke. The return of Alex Neil to the Stadium of Light, really interested to see what the general reaction will be there. Sure, he's more than keen on getting one over on his former employers, but Sunderland I'm sure will be bang up for this one. The crowd especially with Neil coming back. Yeah, I'd love to be at this one this weekend. Sunderland, who could do with getting back to winning ways, 3 without a win now, back-to-back losses obviously, had that quite entertaining game last time against Coventry, ultimately being on the losing end of that one. This does feel like a decent chance to get back to winning ways against a Stoke side who have been faltering. I do think they've looked a little bit more competitive with Pearson especially in that midfield, but the same problems usually persisting. Lack of clinical edge in the final third, certainly applicable to that last championship game they had against Millwall. Obviously they were in action over in midweek as well against Brighton, narrowly losing that one, but I think Sunderland take all 3 points in this one, if I'm honest. It's not the great homecoming for Alex Neil. Score prediction, going to go 2-1 Sunderland there, just see them with a little bit more cutting edge. Next then to Watford up against Preston. Do you know what, I actually enjoyed going to Deepdale in midweek. It was a much improved performance from North End, albeit we failed to hit the back of the net once again, but in terms of chance creation, stringing together a few decent passages of play, I thought our left hand side especially, we had some really good threats throughout the evening with Alvaro Fernandez and DJ especially, who was bang on it, and I think that when utilised in that sort of role he can be massively effective for us. The problems that reared their head once again though was that lack of clinical edge, which has been a problem for us all season. We were guilty of missing some gilt-edged chances. Both Ched Evans and Liam Delap should have scored in that game, and going up against a side like Watford, who haven't been the most cohesive of units recently, but what they can be, I think, is clinical in the final third with players like Davis, Sarr and Pedro especially. Watford only need 1 or 2 chances and they can punish you almost instantly, whereas with Preston at the moment it feels like we need to craft out 5 or 6 chances to even get 1 on target at the moment. So with that being said, I think Watford's quality probably sees them through this game, albeit I did see some improvements with North End in midweek. So score prediction here, I'm going to go 1-0 Watford. I think it'll be fairly tight, but I can see them snatching it. And then to round things off, we've got Wigan going up against Birmingham, and dare I say it, I think this is a must-win game here for Wigan. If they do win, they have the chance to drag Birmingham right down into the relegation race with them. I think they'll only be 4 points behind Birmingham with a game in hand should Wigan go ahead and win this one. Birmingham haven't been on a great run of form recently. I know that Wigan haven't had a lot of goals in their side, but the same could also be said about this Birmingham squad. And to be honest, I thought that Wigan got probably a little bit unlucky with their away performance at Deepdale not to take at least a point from that one, but they're going to need to take some elements of that performance and really hone their craft in this one against Birmingham, because looking at the next few upcoming fixtures for Wigan after this game, I think the fixtures do take a significant flip and get significantly more harder for them, and I think it will be tougher for them to grind out the results in the way they have been doing recently. So for me personally, if they want to avoid the drop this season, I think this is the sort of game that has to be a must win for them. I'm not totally ruling out a goalless draw in this one, but just for the sake of the narrative, I think Wigan could snatch it very narrowly. 1-0 Wigan, I'm saying in that one, but Birmingham have the tendency to turn it on when they want to, but they lose that game, they're right in the relegation battle. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do leave your thoughts in the comments down below. How do you see this weekend's action in the Championship unfolding? Very interested to find out what you have to say. If you did enjoy, do leave a like, get your thoughts down below, but apart from that, I'll see you all in the next one.